Okay, so this welding kit comes with a piece of mesh. As you can see, I cut a little smaller piece of mesh out to fit over this area here, and then I'm going to melt that on, and then I'm going to melt the plastic on top of it on both sides. And I'm going to trim this up a little bit better so it's not as much work. And they give you a whole roll of pretty rough sandpaper, and I just use that to scruff up the area so it'll stick better. They also give you a wire brush, but sandpaper probably works a little better. Use them both to clean up the area. And I can feel that's kind of rough, so that should be good enough. And I got this warming up over here. Be careful, that stays hot. That little metal thing is a stand to keep it on so that you don't melt everything. Alright, now let's get welding. So here are the welding strips. They're just pieces of plastic. They are not flat. They are actually kind of oval if you look at the shape. So you're gonna lay it down and you're gonna melt it in there anyway. So got a bunch of those they gave you, and I bought some packs of them as well, and they come obviously in all different colors to match whatever kind of plastic you're working on or working with. So I fitted this into place here. I trimmed it up a little bit, and I'm gonna see if I could put the iron on that and just melt that into place a little bit. Iron looks like it's getting hot already, so let's see if we could just melt that into place a little bit. If it'll go. Yep, see it does. And you see I'm just melting that into the existing plastic before I put my plastic welds on there. Try to get in there. Tight spots. This actually works pretty good. So that'll be our metal reinforcement there in the back. First, just melting that into the existing metal or into the existing plastic. Not all the way through, just a little bit to get a good footing in there. Otherwise, any plastic I just melt on it, it's going to come right off along with it. Okay. Now I'm using the tip, as you can see from the color of the bottom here. I'm using really just a tip to push that metal into the plastic as I'm melting it in. And it's getting nice and hot now, so it's getting easier and easier to melt it in place. Okay, so now what do we do? Well, once again, this is my first time doing this, so I'm going to put that metal, this piece of plastic down. And you see we're going to melt that into place, rocking it back and forth. Kind of like a welding rod. You could probably even snip off a piece of this, put it where you want it, and melt it into place. And you just spread it how you like. Spread that. Make sure you melt it good though so that sticks. And melt it onto the work. See, I'm just cutting it off with the iron itself. using its heat to melt it into place. And don't breathe this stuff in, it is plastic. You don't want to burn plastic and start breathing that stuff in. Now, over some of these other areas where I got some sharp metal pieces still hanging out, I'm gonna melt some of these rods over that. So I don't have as many sharp metal pieces. It's not going to look pretty, but I'm worried about that. Alright, now let's turn her over and see what we could do on the other side to build up that plastic. All right, so we can see what we're doing here. I'm going to turn this piece over. And you can get an idea of what we're doing. Just trying to adjust the camera here so you get a better vantage point. Okay, hopefully that's good for you. And we're going to try to build in this area now and fill that area in with some of the plastic that we need to melt off. So we're building it up. As you can see, it does a pretty good job. Pretty damn good job. Just gonna try to get that nice and smooth. In some areas, like here, where I didn't even put a metal piece of mesh in, let's see if I could just melt a piece of this plastic over it. It's always good to have a little metal substrate though. Let that cool a little bit and we'll build it up slowly all around it. Here's a little piece of that metal where I went through from the other side. Just building it up a little bit with the plastic welding rod. Just melt off some of the material onto the working plate, onto the working piece that you need. We can melt that, make it look nice and smooth too. kind of like spreading spackle, but it dries really quick. And you got to spread it before it dries. That gives you an idea how this works. This is really warm, really hot. Don't get your fingers near this. Don't want to get it too hot and have it melt just right through the other end either. Shouldn't do that without seeing what I'm doing. See, if I put a little metal substrate on that, it'd probably hold a little better. It's just trying to melt through that little hole. You could see. Probably got it dripping through the other side. We'll turn it over. We'll take a look in just a second, but let me just try to get this all done on this side first. Melting this stuff all along the cracks, all along the crack lines. Not a bad job for a first time plastic welder. It's like tarring the roof. Almost, kind of, sort of. Let that cool a little bit. See around the edges over here. I can build that up a little bit more right here. That needs to be built up more. But as you can see, filling in the cracks pretty nice. Although zoomed in at this magnification, you can see every nook and cranny. Cracks are no longer exposed, so that's good. this is built up. That's all new plastic here. It's all built up. So you can see I melted a whole new rod there. I filled the hole. I'm going to get another rod. We're going to fill this crack here, but I'm going to lift that up a bit now. So I flipped it over, and on the back end you can see over here is where I started filling in that crack, and it's just oozing through there a little bit without actually breaking all the way through. Let's see if I can set the camera here. We can see that right there. You're going to be working right here. See where that was oozing in a bit? I'm going to fill that, backfill it a little bit, maybe. Try to set the camera mount legs here so that you can see it. And let me zoom out a little bit. Alright. So we get another welding rod. And I'm gonna just and let that cool. Don't want it melting through the other end. See all these little places, I could put a little bit of that in there if I want to make it look better, smoother. Alright, fill those gaps. You know, there's a piece of metal under there too. Now you know it's completely enclosed by plastic, so it's not going to be coming out either. And this is just new plastic we're putting on top, melting it right into the existing. And any of those metal pieces are sticking out too. It's kind of like rebar on concrete. Should stick, make it stronger too than what we had there before. We'll turn it over again and we'll see how this is doing over here on the other side. And as you can see, it's doing good. This is about the region. This is about the region where that hole was that was filled. That had no metal meshing. I just filled it in with plastic, and so it looks good on both ends now, and it's solidly filled. This is the leg of my camera. Sorry about that. And so we're going to fill in the hole down here now. And let me just get another camera mount so that you guys can see me doing that. Okay, hopefully this gives you a better vantage point from my end. You can see where I'm working here. I've got to fill in this piece of plastic yet. And we'll build this up over here a little more on the end too. Before I do that, I'm just fixing some more cracks that were just noticed here on the edge by filling them with some new plastic. trying to smoothen that out as much as possible. Did melt a big chunk of plastic there, so. Now, if you ever wanted this perfect, you could go back and sand this plastic down or melt it, try to get it as smooth as possible. You can see it's mostly filled in here now. Got the metal mesh here once again. Just melting that new plastic onto there. Hopefully you guys can see that real good. Seems like those planes are always flying overhead here, huh? I'm gonna move out to the country. I'm in Linden here, kind of Linden, New Jersey. Newark Airport routes those planes right over us. Isn't that lovely? Okay, so that's that metal mesh. Just want that covered with plastic. Don't want any of that metal sticking out of there. So I'll just melt a little piece on here. And just like spackle, I'm gonna put that right on the metal. And we can melt a little more in there. Get it. Try to get it as perfect as possible. Joking with them planes, huh? Anyone want to buy a house in Linden? That's so cool. You want to let it cool too. You don't want to keep it applying all this heat to it. You keep applying the heat to it, then it'll just get liquidy on you. You can just apply heat, let it cool, give a little heat as needed. And this side, I noticed a little chip of plastic missing out of it here. I'm not going to reinforce that with any metal though. Keep my knee away from it though. And let me get it on camera here. You guys can see right here. I'm not even cleaning this up. I'm just going to melt this right in there. I know, not the best way to do it, but whatever. I'm a guy. Melted the plastic with dirt and all. Filled. Alright. That looks good to me, my friends. Right here. Still kind of tacky. Still kind of hot. This side's welded. I do a little touching up in there, and that's pretty much done. Alright, so this is what it looks like in the end. I used one full stick and this much left of a second stick. Here's what we got. Nice close-ups for you. This is where it was missing a big chunk. That's where it was missing a big chunk out of. This is all dry. That's all dried, cooled plastic now. Here's the pieces where we had all those zigzags. I melted some plastic over it, so you don't gotta worry about the metal coming out. The prettiest jobs? No, but it's a frickin' lawnmower cover, the inside where the grass hits, so nobody's gonna see it. And then what I did is, turn this around, here's where I welded those pieces, those metal pieces into the edge, and then I melted some plastic to give it a little more sturdiness along the bottom like that. And she should be, looks a lot more solid than it was. Remember, the thing was wiggling and wagging? It ain't doing nothing now. That's the final job. And that's what it looks like. So, this is where it was missing that big chunk out of. Got welded plastic that's reinforced with steel right above it. Boom. Don't got to buy another one of those pieces. I'm happy. That's not a crack, that's just a water wet spot, by the way. So, here we go. And that's how you fix it. Hope you enjoyed it. It's a long video, I know, but it took me about a half hour.